we operate in a global economy of developers. So even if you live somewhere like, I don't know, India or Venezuela that has a much lower cost of living, you are operating in the same market as a German developer. And if you're someone that has the talent to operate at the same level, you should be asking for those same kinds of prices.
That's
However,
right. That's exactly right.
there are platforms like Fiverr where people will charge, local developer rates for that same kind of work. It may not be the same quality, maybe it is. I don't know the specific developers, but
Mhm.
you have this world where you have these two extremes where people that have the skills to work at that level, and then people who are willing to work for whatever they can possibly make, and it
Right.
really confuses the value of work.
It's a fantastic point. And I think that is not brought up enough. And you're absolutely right. Like, it's tempting to think, oh, we should just hire five Indian developers for the price of one German developer. But it's exactly right. An Indian developer who's as good as a German developer could get remote work in Germany
Mhm.
and make, a German developer's salary, or maybe a little bit less, and live like a king.
Mhm.
So you are competing with that for sure. Like, and any developer you might hire in India who can't compete with that is maybe not the greatest developer to
Mhm.
do that, right? Like, and it's the same thing anywhere. If you get a developer for really, really, really cheap in any country, in the end, you get what you pay for, right?
Mhm.
If you want to hire the best, you're going to need to pay for it. And it's even like we're doing this on easy mode in the open source world,
Mhm.
because in the commercial world, a good developer will ask for like
Yeah.
$150,000, right? A huge amount of money. That's just base salary and then benefits as well. And in the open source world, the kinds of people who are paid to work on this stuff are still largely doing it on passion. Like, any of us who make money on open source, I suspect most of us could quit our jobs and then get new jobs making way more money working on, I don't know, missile guidance systems or something.
Mhm. Mhm.
But then we'd have to live with making missile guidance systems, or, AI restaurant order taking systems.
Right.
And there's a reason why we work on what we work on, right? We love this work and we passionately think this is what the world actually needs. This is not what's going to make some pointy haired boss a buck. This is what we think people need. And this is what we're comfortable building to give away for free.
Mhm.
And one of the costs of that often is that we work for less money than we could make in the industry. And it's a personal choice, right? I respect anybody who doesn't want to make that choice, but I also really respect anybody who does want to make that choice. Ultimately, it's what we can afford and what helps us sleep at night, right?
Yeah. Yeah. At the end of the day, in the open source space, even if you have a passion for a specific project, you might still have a passion for open source. So that it allows that price to come down a little bit. But at the end of the day, people, they have bills to pay, right? You got to pay people something to get the work done.
Yep. I mean, the tough thing is, because we give this stuff away for free, it's always difficult to have a revenue stream. We're not charging exorbitant exploitative subscription rates that have a 300% profit margin on it. That's just not what we do. We don't think that's the right way to do things. And so there's always like this inherent challenge of how do you actually make money, because the world runs on money. Money is actually how people eat and pay the rent and so on and so forth. And I think that's one of the great things about KDE making more of this money. I've been fairly vocal in the past about wanting KDE to take a more active role in hiring. I ran on that platform, and we have done quite a bit of hiring, both before I was on the board and while I have been on the board. That remains my personal perspective on it. And I think it's really important that we in KDE take a leading role in allowing people who work on the project to make a living. I think it's important.
Right, because there already, for anyone who doesn't know, there are companies that do fund work on KDE. Obviously, Valve being the most notable one, but there are companies like Blue Systems as well, and there are a couple others as well. But I think it does make sense for the organization that is supposed to be managing KDE to be the one that is also hiring people to work on KDE.
I think there's room for everybody, right? I don't actually see us as being in
Oh,
competition
sure,
for
yeah, that's not what I meant, but like you
resources
definitely
or
should
whatever.
be.
Yeah, I
It's not
think it's
like
a healthy
yeah.
ecosystem. People are paid by multiple different actors
Mhm.
with different roles in the community. I think that leads to a very healthy and vibrant environment, which doesn't have the systemic risk of one company or institution blowing up and then killing the project, right?
Right.
That's no good.
Yeah, I think well, I think the best example of this is the Linux kernel, right? Where if you look at the list of companies that contribute to the Linux kernel, there are companies on that list that you probably wouldn't expect to be there, like Microsoft and Apple and like Amazon.
Meta,
Like,
Google,
yeah,
it's big companies you've all heard of. Yeah,
and
they all do that.
mm,
And then there's the usual suspects like Intel and
yeah,
AMD and
yeah.
Nvidia. But yeah, it's lots of big companies, and that's one of the things that makes the kernel eternal, is because it's so useful to everybody that they all want and to some extent need to contribute to it.
Mm-hmm. Because yeah, they could all manage their own individual projects, but they've realized that it makes a lot more sense to collaborate on the things that everybody needs in their systems. Like you don't need every single individual to write their own memory management system where it's gonna be the exact same across most of these devices.
Yeah, exactly. And I know that Meta did a lot of the engineering work on ButterFS, which is widely
I
used
didn't
at
know
this
that.
point outside of Meta. So, in the end, we all benefit when this work is made public and not locked behind closed doors. And that's kind of the greatest lesson here, is that all these companies, many of which are actually competitors with each other, are sort of forced to put their work out in the open so that everybody benefits from it. Like they don't have any other option. There's no other game in town. It's the Linux kernel or bust, pretty much. And it shows how, even though a lot of these companies might be competing with each other in the market, their engineers have to work together on the back end and deliver value that everybody else then gets for free. It's kind of an amazing, magical thing if you think about it. And I'm really happy that it exists. And ultimately, that's kind of what I want KDE to be. And I think we're well on our way to being there too.